In the flickering candlelight of a forgotten ledger, a clerk's trembling hand uncovers the impossible: 14 births etched in ink, each child a ghost without a father. But in the shadowed halls of Milwood Estate, where sin whispers through the tobacco leaves, divine justice stirs, demanding the truth of a widow's unholy secret. What if these souls were born not of love, but of a darkness that mocks redemption? The air hung heavy with the scent of aged paper and flickering lamp oil, a sanctuary of silence broken only by the distant toll of a church bell marking midnight. Thomas Harrington, the newly appointed county clerk of Tolbert County, Maryland, sat hunched over his desk in the dim glow of a single candle. Its flame danced erratically, casting elongated shadows across the yellowed pages of the birth registry ledger, a tome that felt more like a confessional than a mere record of lives begun. For 3 relentless months, he had labored here, cross-referencing entries from the past decade, his quill scratching like a penitent's scourge against the parchment. This was no idle task. In the intricate web of 1830s Maryland society, where land was legacy and bloodlines were bonds of iron, accurate documentation was the thin veil between order and chaos. Property disputes simmered like unspoken sins, inheritance claims rose like judgments from the grave, and legal matters demanded the unflinching eye of truth, or at least its facsimile. Thomas's fingers, ink-stained and weary, traced the columns of names, dates, and parentage. The handwriting varied, some bold and flourishing, others cramped and hurried, as if the scribes themselves had been eager to escape the weight of what they recorded. But then, in the witching hour, when the world outside his modest office slumbered under a canopy of stars, he saw it. A pattern emerging like a serpent uncoiling from the garden's depths. 14 entries, all tethered to the same forsaken place, Milwood Estate. 14 births spanning the shadowed years from 1833 to 1836. And in each, the paternal line gaped empty, father unknown, or simply a void, a blank space screaming louder than any confession. He leaned back in his creaking wooden chair, the sound echoing like a distant thunderclap in the empty room. A chill crept up his spine, despite the humid embrace of the summer night seeping through the cracked window. In his 5 years clerking in the bustling offices of Pennsylvania, where the air buzzed with the clatter of commerce and the shouts of millworkers, he had encountered the occasional irregularity: a child born out of wedlock, whispered scandals in taverns, families fractured by human frailty. 1 or 2 such entries might pass unnoticed, ripples in the vast river of life. Even 3 or 4 could be rationalized, perhaps a wayward romance, a fleeting indiscretion under the moonlit fields. But 14? All from the same estate, like seeds sown in cursed soil? It defied the natural order, mocked the biblical mandate of lineage and legacy, where every soul was meant to trace back to Adam's fall. Milwood Estate. The name repeated like a litany in the ledger, inscribed by different hands across the years, yet always the same anchor of mystery. Owned by Mrs. Catherine Vance, a widow who had claimed the property upon her husband's untimely demise in 1832. Thomas's mind wandered to the estate's description in the tax rolls: a modest tobacco plantation, sprawled across 200 acres of fertile yet unforgiving land, worked by some 40 enslaved souls whose lives were bound to the rhythm of the crop planting, tending, harvesting under the relentless sun. The mothers' names leaped from the page: Eliza, born colored; Mary, Negro; Sarah, mulatto. Their births noted as unremarkable, no scrawls of complications, no frantic pleas for midwives in the margins. Yet that paternal absence persisted, a deliberate omission, a silence that thundered with unspoken guilt. Compelled by an inner urging, perhaps the Holy Spirit's whisper, or merely the clerk's innate sense of justice, Thomas delved deeper. He retrieved the property tax ledger from a dusty shelf, its leather binding cracked like aged skin, and flipped to the death certificates. Jonathan Vance, deceased March 1832, at age 47, felled by a consumptive illness that had ravaged his lungs like divine retribution for some hidden vice. His widow, Catherine, then 34, a woman of reported poise and reserve. No progeny from their union graced any record; their marriage, it seemed, had been barren as the winter fields. And then, the first anomalous birth, exactly 7 months after Jonathan's burial, as if the grave's shadow had birthed something unnatural. Thomas's heart quickened, a pulse echoing the moral dread that biblical tales instilled at stories of widows in Scripture, like Tamar who disguised herself to claim her due, or Ruth who found redemption in loyalty. But here, no such clarity. Was this mere administrative neglect, a laxity in recording the unions among the enslaved? Or something darker, a perversion of the natural law where man and woman were joined as one flesh? 14 children, fatherless in ink, yet surely not in flesh. He closed his eyes, imagining the estate's fields under moonlight, the rustle of tobacco leaves like ghosts murmuring secrets. Sin, the scriptures warned, would always find you out. Numbers 32:23 echoed in his mind, be sure your sin will find you out. Was this the unraveling thread of a greater transgression? The decision crystallized in the pre-dawn hours. He must see Milwood for himself, tread its grounds, breathe its air heavy with the scent of earth and bondage. But discretion was key, in this tight-knit community of old Maryland families, where loyalties ran deeper than the Chesapeake's tides, questions could stir tempests. He informed his supervisor of a routine verification trip, nothing amiss, nearly dots to connect, I's to cross in the grand ledger of justice. Dawn broke humid and oppressive on that July morning in 1836, the sun rising like a judgmental eye over the rolling hills. Thomas saddled his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Mercy. Ironic, he thought, given the merciless institution he rode toward. The road to Milwood wound through prosperous tobacco country, fields stretching like verdant seas, dotted with workers bent in eternal supplication to the soil. The air hummed with the low drone of insects, mingled with the faint, rhythmic chants of field songs, spirituals that spoke of Jordan's crossing, of freedom beyond the grave. To the west, the Chesapeake Bay gleamed, its waters a lifeline to Baltimore's markets, carrying bales of tobacco and whispers of revolution from afar. This was ancient land, held by generations who traced their roots to colonial charters, where everyone professed to know everyone's affairs, yet secrets festered like hidden wounds. Over a hasty breakfast at a roadside inn, Thomas probed a local merchant, a portly man with a mustache perpetually flecked with crumbs. Mrs. Vance? Eccentric, aye, but respectable enough, the merchant drawled, wiping his lips with a soiled napkin. Widowed young, inherited Milwood lock, stock, and barrel. Attends church sporadically, St. Mary's down the way, but keeps her tithes current. Rarely graces socials, told the Reverend's wife she'd rather her solitude than a hasty remarriage. Independence, she calls it. Thomas sipped his coffee, black and bitter as regret, and ventured casually, any whispers about the estate? Odd happenings? The merchant's brow furrowed, puzzled. Odd? Nah, quiet as a tomb. Produces fair tobacco, pays bills prompt. Overseer Briggs runs the show day to day. No scandals I recall. But Thomas knew tombs held the dead secrets, and quiet often masked the screams of the soul. As he rode on, the landscape shifted subtly, the fields more manicured, the woods denser, as if nature itself conspired to conceal. The entrance to Milwood loomed, two stone pillars, moss-cloaked sentinels etched with the faint remnants of a family crest, weathered by rain and regret. A narrow lane snaked through the tobacco rows, where enslaved workers moved like shadows, their hands deftly pruning leaves, their songs a haunting melody of sorrow and hope. Swing low, sweet chariot, comin' for to carry me home. The words pierced Thomas, evoking psalms of deliverance, a spiritual undercurrent that made the estate's mystery feel like a desecration. The main house materialized after a quarter-mile, a two-story Georgian edifice with white columns that gleamed falsely in the sunlight, black shutters like closed eyes hiding inner darkness. Time had not been kind, paint flaked like shedding sins, shutters dangled crooked as twisted consciences. From the overseer's cottage, a squat, weathered building, emerged a figure, Mr. Briggs, 50s, barrel-chested, his face ruddy from sun and perhaps spirits, eyes squinted in perpetual suspicion. Help ya? The words barked like a guard dog's challenge. Thomas dismounted, the ground soft under his boots, stirring dust that clung like accusations. He presented his credentials, a folded parchment bearing the county seal. Thomas Harrington, county clerk. Here to verify birth records with Mrs. Vance. Briggs's gaze narrowed, a storm brewing. Birth records? What's amiss? Routine, sir. May I see her? After a grudging pause, Briggs nodded toward the house. Porch. I'll check. Waiting on the porch, Thomas felt the boards creak underfoot, solid yet echoing emptiness. Worn wicker chairs sagged, inviting no rest. Through a grimy window, the parlor loomed dim, heavy drapes swallowing light like a shroud over truth. The door creaked open, revealing Catherine Vance. Petite, 5'3", her dark hair pulled taut in a severe bun, framing a face pale as parchment. Her black mourning dress, for years persistent, absorbed the light, her eyes pale blue, piercing as judgment, locked onto his.
Mr. Harrington.
Briggs mentioned records. Her voice, low and even, carried the flat drawl of Maryland gentry, but undercut with steel.
Birth registries, ma'am. May I enter? A flicker of hesitation, then she stepped aside.
The parlor. Inside, the house exhaled age, polished wood mingled with a faint, acrid tang.
Medicinal, like laudanum or secrets bottled.
The parlor's gloom enveloped him, two narrow windows admitting slivers of light that danced dust motes like restless spirits. Above the mantel, a portrait glowered, Jonathan Vance, stern-featured, eyes accusing from beyond the grave. Seated opposite, Catherine's posture was ramrod straight, hands folded like a prayer unuttered.
Thomas unfolded his notes.
Compiling county births, I've noted 14 from here, 1833 to 1836, all sans paternal details. He watched her, no twitch, no falter.
I see no issue. Enslaved unions aren't always formalized. True, but 14? Unusual. Fathers unknown to me. I manage the estate, not intimacies. Her tone sharpened, a blade drawn. Thomas pressed gently.
On such a property, knowledge spreads.
Might I speak to the mothers? Unnecessary. Their privacy is sacred, my duty.
The word sacred hung, ironic in this house of shadows. She rose, ending the exchange.
Without a court order, we're done. Exiting, Thomas mounted Mercy, glancing back. An upstairs curtain twitched, a silhouette vanishing like a ghost. The fields fell silent, sounds hushed as if in warning.
Divine justice, he mused, citing Proverbs, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Back in town, 2 days blurred in discreet inquiries. Merchants confirmed Milwood's solvency, no odd traffic, no abuse whispers beyond slavery's norm.
Yet, no physicians summoned for births. Extraordinary, Thomas pondered.
At the blacksmith's, the wife, a font of gossip, spilled old Dinah midwife Saul.
30 years, trusted utterly by Mrs. Vance. Dinah, the key.
Approaching her wrist peril, but truth demanded it. 3 days later, with Catherine at a funeral afar, Thomas slipped through eastern woods, horse-led stealthily. Slave quarters, cabins huddled, fires flickering like altars, women stirring pots of cornmeal and greens, scents of smoke and sweat mingling. Children darted, laughter brittle against bondage's weight. Men trudged from fields, shoulders bowed under tools and fate. He neared an elder shelling peas, her white hair a halo, eyes clouded yet keen.
Dinah? Hands paused. Who's a skin? Thomas Harrington, clerk. About births, 14, no fathers. Her gaze pierced. Lots of births here. Ain't natural forgettin'. Thomas crouched, voice low. Help me understand. This silence, it's like a curse unspoken.
She sighed, peas clattering.
Child, you tread where angels fear.
Them babies, born in shadows, where sin and sorrow meet. Mistress Vance, she got her ways that twist the good book's words.
Fathers?
Ain't none 'cause there weren't unions of the flesh as God intended. Something darker, like the serpent's promise in Eden.
Thomas's blood ran cold. Was this artificial conception? Unholy experiments defying creation's order? Scriptures flooded, be fruitful and multiply, but not through man's hubris. Dinah's words evoked Frankenstein's monster, a tale whispered in literary circles, but here, grounded in plantation dirt.
As night deepened, firelight casting demonic dances on cabin walls, Dinah leaned closer. Started after Master Vance passed. Consumption took him slow, coffin blood like Cain's mark. Mistress mourned, but then, changes. She read books, strange ones from Baltimore, about bodies and births without men. Called it science, but I seen the devil in it. Thomas probed, how? What method? Dinah shook her head. Ain't for sayin' full. But needles, fluids from beasts or worse. Enslaved girls chosen young, strong.
promised extra rations, less lash. But their eyes after, haunted, like souls sold. The revelation struck like lightning. Parthenogenesis? Apocryphal tales of virgin births, but twisted. Biblical Virgin Mary was divine, this was mockery. Guilt, sin, redemption swirled, Catherine seeking legacy without remarriage, defying widowhood's barren curse. Yet evidence? Dinah offered a token, a hidden vial, remnant of mistress's elixir. Thomas pocketed it, heart pounding. As he slipped away, owls hooted omens, woods whispering judgments. Back in his office, vial glinting under candlelight, Thomas pondered. This wasn't mere omission, it was abomination. Psychological torment for the mothers, spiritual desecration. Themes of divine retribution loomed, Sodom's fall for perverting nature. He resolved, confront Catherine again, but with proof. The estate's legacy haunted, a chilling testament to human overreach. The firelight from the outdoor hearths flickered like wavering faith, casting elongated shadows across the dirt-packed ground of the slave quarters. Dinah's gnarled fingers, etched with the scars of decades delivering life into a world of chains, resumed their rhythmic dance over the peas, shells cracking like brittle confessions in the still evening air. Thomas Harrington knelt there, the damp earth seeping through his trousers, his breath held in suspense as if awaiting judgment. The air was thick with the aroma of simmering stew, cornmeal and scraps of pork fat, mingled with the distant lowing of cattle and the faint, mournful hum of a spiritual drifting from a nearby cabin. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. For what felt like an eternity, Dinah said nothing, her clouded eyes fixed on some invisible horizon, perhaps the promised land beyond this veil of tears. Then, her voice emerged, a rasp barely louder than the rustle of leaves in the encroaching woods. You carry the look of a man burdened by righteousness, clerk. Heed this once, turn your horse round, ride back to your ink pots and ledgers. Scribble what needs scribbling and let Milwood's ghosts lie undisturbed. Thomas's jaw set firm, the weight of his oath to uphold the law pressing like the stone tablets of Moses. I can't abandon this. The omissions, they cry out for truth. A dry chuckle escaped her lips, bitter as gall. Foolish as David Pekin at Bathsheba. Some riddles ain't meant for soul then, they got their own divine reckoning, rules writ in blood and spirit, not your mortal statutes. Milwood's one such place, where the Almighty's gaze lingers heavy. Thomas leaned closer, the fire's warmth battling the chill of her words. What curse hangs here? These children, 14 souls entered without paternal claim. Born hale, yet shrouded in mystery. Dinah sat. Her bowl aside with deliberate slowness, her frame unfolding with unexpected vitality, like an ancient prophet rising to deliver oracle. She leaned in, her breath carrying the faint scent of herbs, sage and rue, wards against evil. Those babes draw breath strong, cradled and shielded. Their mamas walk unbowed, spared the lash's kiss more than most in this forsaken Eden. Why stir the serpent's nest? The world's woes are plenty without your meddling. Because justice demands it, Thomas retorted, his voice echoing the psalm's cry for equity. But Dinah's eyes flashed with the fire of one who had seen the hypocrisy of man's law. Justice? Ha! That same justice brands me chattel, these young ones' future toil. It strips a woman of dominion over her own temple, body and soul. And you preach its gospel? Shame flushed Thomas's cheeks, hot as the coals glowing nearby. He averted his gaze to the ground, where ants marched in orderly lines, oblivious to the human drama above. I don't claim to fathom your trials, but fathom nothing, she cut in, her tone a whip's crack. But since you court peril like Jonah fleeing Nineveh, ponder this, in 3 years' harvest of life, 14 sprouts, how many mirror Briggs's ruddy mug? How many echo any man's shadow on this soil? Thomas's brow furrowed, confusion swirling like dust devils in his mind. I don't grasp your meaning. Blind as Saul on Damascus road, she muttered, reclaiming her bowl. Now scat, 'fore I spot you. Curiosity's killed more than cats, it'll claim us both. With that, she vanished into her cabin's gloom, the door creaking shut like a tomb ceiling. Thomas rose unsteadily, Dinah's enigma reverberating in his skull as he retraced his steps through the whispering woods. The moon hung low, a silver sickle reaping the night sky, illuminating his path back to mercy, his horse tethered in the underbrush. As he mounted and spurred her toward town,
The words gnawed at him, children unlike any estate man.
What? Unholy alchemy birthed them? Biblical tales flooded his thoughts, Lot's daughters in desperation, or the Nephilim, giants born of forbidden unions. Was Milwood a modern Sodom, where human ambition mocked God's design? Back in his dimly lit office, the candle's flame sputtered defiantly against the darkness, mirroring Thomas's resolve.
He spread out the records like a mosaic of sin, property deeds yellowed as old sins, tax assessments tallying souls like livestock, crop yields charting prosperity built on bondage. Jonathan Vance had acquired Milwood in 1820, inheritance from a patriarchal line stretching back to colonial grants.
In 1825, he wed Catherine Harper, offspring of a Baltimore merchant whose fortunes ebbed like the tides.
Church annals painted them as devout, attending Sabbath services at St. Mary's, their pastor noting them reserved yet upright, vessels of quiet grace.
Yet, no fruit from their union, no entries of births, no laments of stillborns or infant passages to glory. 12 years barren, a matrimonial desert echoing Sarah's way for Isaac, but without divine intervention. Then, March 1832, Jonathan's consumptive end, lungs ravaged as if by heavenly fire, buried under Milwood's ancient oaks. 7 months hence, October 1832, Ruth's child, fatherless in record. February 1833, Sarah's offspring, void paternal. July 1833, Hannah's babe, unnamed sire.
The timeline Thomas sketched in his notebook unfolded like prophetic scroll, 3 to 4 births yearly, all enslaved mothers aged 17 to 32, vessels in this peculiar genesis. Survival rates defied the era's grim reaper, infant mortality claimed 1 in 5 souls then, yet Milwood's brood thrived, as if blessed or cursed, with unnatural vigor.
Emboldened by Dinah's riddle, Thomas sought visual testament.
He revisited the blacksmith's wife, her tongue a wellspring of local lore, over tea steeped strong as her gossip. Milwood folk in town, he queried, feigning idle curiosity.
Wednesdays.
For sundries at the general store.
Mrs. Vance trusts them unsupervised that.
Most masters chain their shadows. Gratitude masked his intent. Come Wednesday, he loitered near the store, newspaper a flimsy veil, the street bustling with carts and calls of vendors hawking wares, bolts of calico, barrels of molasses, the air sweet with pipe tobacco and fresh-baked bread. Noon approached when a weathered wagon rattled in, driven by a lithe young man, his muscles corded from field toil. 3 women alighted, baskets in hand, one cradling a toddler on her hip, a girl of perhaps 2, skin the hue of warm honey, hair straight and fine as silk threads, cascading to her shoulders. Features delicate as porcelain, eyes amber pools reflecting innocence. Thomas's heart skipped, this was no rough-hewn child of laborers. As they entered the store, he trailed discreetly, the wooden floors creaking underfoot, shelves laden with goods evoking a marketplace of Babel. The mother Ruth, he deduced from the shopkeeper's familiar hail, set the child down amid bolts of fabric, the girl humming a tuneless melody, fingers tracing patterns in the dust. Thomas feigned interest in a flour barrel, crouching low, his gaze stealing glimpses. The child met his eyes, shy smile blooming like a forbidden flower, then burrowed into her mother's skirts. No resemblance to Briggs's coarse visage, his beet-red skin, bulbous nose, wiry hair. This one's elegance whispered of higher breeding, an anomaly in this strata of suffering. At the counter, the shopkeeper bantered, Milwood faring well, Ruth? Yes, sir, her voice a soft lilt, melodic as a hymn. He nodded at the child. Sproutin' fast, that one. Healthy by grace, sir. Thomas interposed gently, exquisite features on the lass. Ruth's eyes clouded, a veil of caution descending. Thank ye, sir. Takes after kin, I reckon. The reply snapped too swift, a door slamming on inquiry. As they departed, packages bundled, Ruth's glance back held layers, dread, admonition, or silent plea? The child waved from the wagon, tiny hand fluttering like a dove's wing, oblivious to the storm her birth ignited. That afternoon, Thomas canvassed more shops, glimpsing 3 additional children from his ledger. Each bore the stamp, light complexion, refined contours, and ethereal poise defying their origins. Not echoes of field hands' rugged builds, but siblings in semblance, the almond eyes, Cupid's bow lips, fragile bones as if sculpted from the same divine clay. One father? The notion chilled him, evoking Herod's slaughter of innocents, or Pharaoh's drowned babes, multiplied life, yet tainted by mystery. Conscience, that inner compass forged in Puritan upbringing, propelled him onward. Justice wasn't abstract, it was the scales of Ma'at, biblical equity where the widow and orphan found succor. But Milwood inverted it, a perversion where protection masked deeper iniquity. He craved irrefutable proof, witnesses, artifacts, to lay before magistrates, lest his pursuit be deemed folly. Providence intervened on a Saturday eve, as Thomas pored over notes in his boarding-house chamber, the room sparse, a narrow bed, washstand, the air musty with solitude. A tentative knock shattered the quiet. Opening the door revealed a Negro man, impeccably attired in waistcoat and trousers, hat clutched deferentially.
"Mr. Harrington?"
"Daniel Pierce. Whispers say you're unearthing Milwood's veil." Thomas beckoned him in, scanning the hall for prying eyes. Such a rendezvous could spark scandal in border state Maryland, where freedom's frayed at edges. Over coffee brewed on a modest stove, its steam curling like incense, Daniel unfolded his tale, a free carpenter from Baltimore, skilled in joinery, his dark skin gleaming in lamplight. "Word ripples through our circles, your queries 'bout the estate, shadowing comings and goings. My sister clerks at the general store, she penned me. Why reach out?"
Thomas probed. Daniel's cup clinked down, gaze steady as job's endurance.
"Hannah, my kin, sold to Milwood 3 years past, 17 tender years, to settle a Baltimore clan's debts. I vowed to ransom her, scraped coins from labor, near the sum now.
But Vance rebuffs all.
Letters, offers above worth, even a pilgrimage, denied at gates by Briggs.
Last missive claimed Hannah content, no yen for liberty."
His voice cracked, raw with fraternal anguish.
Lies. She'd grasped freedom like manna. Thomas consulted his ledger. Hannah birthed in July 1833, no sire noted.
Daniel's fists clenched.
A letter confirmed the babe, father omitted. Visits barred.
From his coat, he produced a creased epistle, edges worn as a cherished psalm. Her sole word, 6 months post-arrival. Treated fair, Mrs. Vance unlike others, no grievances.
But the script, hers, yet spirit absent, rehearsed, as if under watchful eye.
Thomas scanned the lines, penmanship precise, phrasing formal, devoid of Hannah's vivacity Daniel described.
"May I retain this? If it pierces the veil." "Your suspicion of Milwood?" Daniel reclined, shadows playing across his features like doubts. "Unclear, but this, Hannah mothers one, yet lingers. Typically, fertile women breed or fetch premium sale. But Milwood's daughters stay rooted, unsold, unmoved. And hearsay? They're guarded from Briggs's wrath, traitors' leers, the plantation's routine brutalities. The implication hung heavy, sanctuary amid slavery's storm. Why shield them?" Thomas mused aloud. Daniel's eyes met his. What profit for Vance? Beyond coin, these children hold worth ethereal, perhaps. The query echoed Dinah's, crystallizing the enigma, value transcending labor, a spiritual currency in souls. Thomas paced, floorboards groaning like burdened consciences. "I must breach Milwood with law's sword warrant, authority, to unveil this." Daniel nodded, rising. "Tread wary, shadows there devour the light. But if redemption comes, it's God's hand through yours." As he departed into the night, Thomas clutched the letter, its words a talisman. Guilt gnawed, his privilege probing others' pain, but divine retribution stirred, promising justice for the fatherless. Echoes of Isaiah, learn to do right, seek justice. Defend the oppressed. The path ahead loomed perilous, a pilgrimage through moral wilderness, where sin's legacy haunted every step. The clearing in the woods felt like a confessional booth carved from nature's cathedral, the ancient oaks arching overhead like judgmental arches, their leaves whispering psalms of condemnation in the fading light. Thomas Harrington dismounted, his boots sinking into the soft loam rich with the scent of moss and decay, a reminder of how all flesh returns to dust. Daniel Pierce paced before him, his silhouette etched against the twilight, agitation radiating like heat from a forge. The air hummed with the distant chirp of crickets, a nocturnal choir underscoring the gravity of revelations yet unspoken. Thomas's heart thudded with the weight of impending truth, echoing the biblical admonition in Deuteronomy, "The secret things belong unto the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong unto us."
I must pierce the veil of Milwood, Thomas declared, his voice steady despite the storm within. Witness the quarters, converse with the mothers, chronicle every shadow of irregularity. Daniel halted, his dark eyes reflecting the last glimmers of sun filtering through branches. How, clerk? With what authority? A petition to Magistrate Roberts, Thomas replied, envisioning the elderly judge's chambers, lined with leather-bound tomes of law, a bastion of earthly justice. Irregularities in the ledgers, patterns defying nature, will compel an inquiry, a sanctioned descent into this enigma. Daniel rose, his frame taut as a bowstring. Act swift, Harrington. My sister's ensnared in webs unseen, delay breeds deeper entanglement, harder to sever like thorns in flesh. As Daniel melted into the shadows, Thomas returned to his boarding house, the room's single lamp casting a halo of light on his desk, cluttered with parchments like scattered leaves from the tree of knowledge. Until dawn's first blush painted the horizon in hues of redemption, he labored, quill scratching feverishly, documenting anomalies as meticulously as a scribe copying scripture. The timeline of births, voids in paternity like omissions in a confessional, the children's ethereal resemblances, defying estate men's rugged forms, the mother's guarded sanctuaries, shielded from brutality's grasp, denied kin communications, echoing Pharaoh's isolation of the Israelites. His argument wove legal threads, violations of county mandates, potential shrouds over graver sins, fraud, perhaps, or perversions of divine order where lineage was sacred, as in Genesis's begots. Sealing the petition with wax, impressed by his signet, a simple cross symbolizing faith amid bureaucracy, Thomas rode to the county seat as the sun ascended, a celestial witness to his quest. Unbeknownst to him, Catherine Vance's tendrils extended into the halls of power, alliances forged in drawing rooms and church pews, where whispers could stall the wheels of justice like sand in gears. Weeks dragged like a penitent's pilgrimage, Magistrate Roberts's deliberation a glacial crawl, his reputation for caution a double-edged sword. Thomas chafed in his office, the air stale with ink and impatience, poring over ancillary records, property surveys mapping Milwood's bounds like Eden's garden, deed transfers chronicling ownership's chain, crop reports tallying tobacco's bounty, harvested by bound hands under relentless skies. Amid the mundane, a cryptic notation from 1830 leaped forth, estate inspection post neighbors lament of nocturnal peculiarities. No infractions discerned. Nocturnal peculiarities? The phrase evoked witches' sabbaths or forbidden rites under moon's pallid gaze, but details evaporated like morning mist, lost, or excised by deliberate hand? Driven by this spectral hint, Thomas sought the retired clerk, Wallace, in his riverside cottage, the structure humble as a hermit's cell, surrounded by willows weeping over the slow creek. The old man, weathered as ancient parchment, cast his line into the murmuring waters, the plop of the hook a punctuation in the symphony of nature. Milwood, Wallace mused, his voice gravelly as river stones. I, punctual with dews, widow helmed post husband's passing. Thomas pressed, birth ledgers riddled with gaps, paternal voids. Wallace's gaze fixed on the line's submersion, silence stretching like taut string. Lad, wisdom's in recording, not probing. File the given, slumber unburdened. But if iniquity festers? Thomas urged, invoking the moral compass of his upbringing. Wallace reeled an empty, recast with a sigh. Iniquity by whose measure? Maryland's soil, tobacco's realm, deeds on every plot to sicken the soul. Clerks tally, not rectify. You sensed anomaly at Milwood. Wallace gathered his tackle, rising stiffly. Vance's widow steered solo, kept folk nourished, stirred no storms. Sufficed for me, should for thee. He departed, leaving Thomas by the creek's edge, the water's flow a metaphor for truth's slipping away, his resolve hardened like tempered steel. If predecessors averted eyes, Thomas would gaze unflinching, a watchman on Zion's walls. Yet fate, that divine playwright, intervened before further strides. Midnight's cloak enveloped the town on an August Tuesday, church bells tolling frantic as Jericho's trumpets, rousing Thomas from slumber. Donning attire hastily, he burst into the street, the night air thick with urgency, townsfolk surging eastward like a biblical exodus. Horizon aglow orange, a false dawn of destruction. Milwood ablaze, cries echoed, piercing the dark. At the livery, Thomas seized a swift steed, galloping toward the inferno, wind whipping his face like scourges of conscience. Smoke-sacred tang grew, the glow intensifying to a hellish beacon.
Arriving, chaos reigned, neighbors, makeshift brigades, gawkers clustered. The manor house devoured by flames, roaring like the furnace of Daniel's trial, heat repelling all within 50 paces. Silhouettes dashed with buckets from the well, futile as prayers against inevitable judgment. Spotting Briggs by his cottage, face soot-smeared, bellowing commands lost in the roar, Thomas seized his arm. Vance? Where? Briggs shrugged free, eyes wild as a cornered beast. Inside when it sparked. Rushed in, but blazed too fierce, stares aflame, couldn't breach. A piercing wail sliced the night, enslaved women huddled near quarters, faces illuminated by fire's demonic dance. Ruth among them, clutching her daughter, the child's sobs muffled in fabric. Thomas approached, flames crackling like brimstone. Vance escape? Ruth's eyes met his, not terror's glaze, nor sorrow's veil, but a flicker of liberation, as if chains snapped. She emerged not, Ruth murmured, voice steady amid pandemonium. Ignited in her sanctum, upstairs engulfed air, Briggs noted. Origin? Ruth's gaze held secrets, suggesting knowledge veiled. The conflagration raged till dawn, reducing the house to skeletal ruins, embers glowing like coals of Gehenna. Sun's rise revealed desolation, charred beams jutting like accusatory fingers, ash blanketing ground as sackcloth. Searchers sifted debris, unearthing Catherine's remains in bedroom's charred husk identified by resilient wedding band, a circle of eternity twisted by fire. Sheriff Porter arrived mid-morn, portly frame astride horse, badge glinting like false righteousness. He interrogated Briggs, probed ruins, queried workers under sun's unyielding stare. By afternoon, verdict proclaimed, accidental, lamp or taper likely. Widow solitary, aid unattainable. Tragic commonplace. Thomas interjected, voice rising above murmurs. Sheriff, probe deeper, estate's anomalies demand it. Porter's brow furrowed. Anomalies? Thomas expounded, ledger's voids, birth's mysteries. Impatience mounted. Implying arson over records? Evidence? Thomas faltered, suspicions. Abundant, proof elusive. Then mind your post, Porter dismissed, turning heel. Lingering amid ruins, Thomas observed Briggs orchestrating salvage, estate poised for auction, souls bundled as assets, customs cruel calculus sans heirs. As dusk encroached, Daniel materialized, urgent whisper, converse afar. They retreated to woodland glade, horses tethered, moonlight filtering like ethereal judgment. Hannah confided verity, Daniel burst, voice quivering. Flame no mishap, deliberate. Thomas's pulse surged. By whom? Daniel paced, composing. Not foes external. Hannah's missive vowed I'd relay, deeming you sole ally. Relay what? Daniel halted, eyes piercing. Vance orchestrated all 14 progeny hers. The revelation struck like thunderbolt, world spinning as in Saul's blinding. Impossible, concealment defies. Daniel slumped on log, producing Hannah's epistle, script trembling as candle flame. Post Jonathan's demise, law's snare, widow's life tenure, reversion to kin sans issue. Independence craved, remarriage spurned. Thomas absorbed, Catherine pregnant summer 1832, perhaps merchant's fleeting union. Concealed gestation, seclusion feigned illness, loose garb, visitors shunned. Dinah midwifed clandestine birth, infant nursed covertly, then bestowed to Ruth as her own, registered fatherless. Pattern reiterated, conceptions veiled, delivery secret, babes attributed to enslaved, securing heirs potential, estate's legacy. Motivations murky, maternal yearning post-barren marriage, or calculated defiance of patriarchal chains? Hannah's words painted horrors, women's complicity coerced, silence bought with protections, yet soul scarred by deception's weight. Thomas's mind reeled, spiritual implications crashing, mockery of virgin birth, perversion of creation's sanctity. Proverbs warned, bread of deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel. Catherine's ambition invited wrath, fire as purifying judgment. But Hannah's letter hinted more, the fire's true spark. Women, burdened by secrets, ignited it, retribution's hand. Relief in Ruth's eyes now clear, liberation from yoke. Divine justice manifest, echoing Job, though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, it shall be accomplished before his eyes. Thomas pondered redemption, children's fate, estate's dissolution. Guilt, sin's shadow, lingered, yet in exposure, perhaps healing.
Psychological depths plumbed, Catherine's isolation, a widow's despair twisting to hubris, mother's empathy forged in shared suffering.
As night deepened, stars wheeling like heavenly hosts, Thomas resolved, petition withdrawn, truths buried? Or pursued, risking all?
The legacy haunted, a chilling sermon on ambition's folly. The woodland glade, shrouded in the hush of encroaching dusk, felt like the threshold of Sheol, where secrets buried deep in the earth might rise to accuse the living. Moonlight filtered through the canopy like fragments of shattered stained glass, casting ethereal patterns on the fallen leaves that crunched underfoot, a brittle reminder of mortality's inexorable march.
Thomas Harrington clutched Hannah's letter in his trembling hands, the parchment absorbing the chill of the evening air, its ink seeming to pulse with the weight of revelations unspoken.
Daniel Pierce sat heavily on the moss-covered log, his breath visible in faint puffs, as if exhaling the burdens of generations chained by injustice.
The distant hoot of an owl pierced the silence, an omen echoing the biblical watchman's cry, "For all our days are passed away in thy wrath, we spend our years as a tale that is told." Thomas's eyes scanned the final lines, each word a dagger twisting in his soul. Catherine Vance, not the barren widow of record, but the clandestine bearer of life 14 times over, her womb a secret garden defying societal edicts. Conceptions veiled in mystery, pregnancies concealed behind locked doors and feigned maladies, deliveries attended solely by Dinah's weathered hands in the dead of night. Each infant, swaddled in shadows, nursed in seclusion for moons before being entrusted to the enslaved women Ruth, Sarah, Hannah, and their sisters in bondage as if they were fruits of their own loins. Registered as such, mothers colored, fathers voids, mere administrative ghosts in the county's tomes. "Lord have mercy," Thomas murmured, his voice a hoarse invocation, crossing himself instinctively as the enormity settled like a shroud. The air grew heavier, scented with pine resin and the faint, acrid trace of smoke wafting from Milwood's ruins, a sensory echo of divine retribution. Why acquiesce? These women, bound already, why partake in such deception?
Daniel's gaze hardened, eyes reflecting the flickering starlight like coals of suppressed fury.
Choice?
A mirage in chains. Yet, better the devil known, Vance warded them from Briggs's brutish grasp, from Trader's predatory eyes, from the lash's kiss and separation's agony.
Extra rations, sturdy cabins, reprieve from field's relentless toil in trade for silence, for cradling her progeny as their own. Nurses in guise of mothers, guardians of a white woman's legacy, twisted as Eve's temptation.
Thomas folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his coat like a forbidden scroll, his mind reeling with spiritual turmoil. This was no mere scandal, it mocked the sacred order of creation, where God commanded, "Be fruitful and multiply," but within the bonds of matrimony and truth. Catherine's acts evoked the harlot Rahab, hiding spies for salvation, yet here the salvation was selfish, a perversion where slavery's yoke concealed personal sin.
And the 15th?
Daniel's voice dropped to a grave whisper, laden with the sorrow of Job.
Another quickening, but cursed. Illness gripped her fevered nights, Dinah's herbs failing like manna turned wormwood. Prognosis dire, birth might claim her, summoning physicians, unraveling the web. Exposure loomed, scandal's floodgates bursting.
The fire, then, not accident, but deliberate immolation. Catherine, architect of her pyre, igniting her chambers to consume evidence, body, and unborn soul. A suicide veiled as tragedy, dying on terms defiant, her secret interred in ashes.
Thomas paced the glade, boots stirring leaves like restless spirits.
His breath quickening.
The fathers? Whose seed sowed this harvest?
Daniel shrugged, shoulders sagging under invisible chains.
Veiled as the rest.
Perhaps a singular paramour, shadows in her bedchamber, or merchants transient, whispers in Baltimore's ports.
Ignorant or complicit, they vanished like smoke.
And the children, 14 innocents, marked by ethereal features, honeyed eyes, delicate bones, now adrift in the estate's dissolution.
Auction's gavel loomed, scattering them as chattel, severed from surrogate mothers, kin unrecognized.
Reveal it, Daniel urged, voice sharp as a prophet's rebuke. Yet ponder, proof elusive, out-of-wedlock bastards in law's cold eye writes nil.
Mothers punished, branded deceivers, perhaps hanged for aiding fraud. Gain? Not but deeper woe. Thomas halted, staring into the void between trees, where darkness pooled like sin unconfessed.
The law, that earthly arbiter, offered no balm, only cruelties layered as in Pharaoh's decrees.
Mercy, then?
Silence as shield, echoing the Saviour's forgiveness of the adulteress, neither do I condemn thee.
What of Hannah's wish? Thomas queried, soul wrestling as Jacob with the angel.
Daniel gestured toward the smoldering horizon.
Seal the ledgers as is.
14 births, mothers etched, fathers absent.
Let the unborn fade as miscarriage, no more.
Preserve the veil, expose undoes protections woven fragile. The letter, a talisman of truth, he offered, keep or consign to flame, but alter not the record.
Survival's grace, granted by women's vigil. Back in town, the physician's report circulated like forbidden gospel. Catherine pregnant, 6-month swell confirmed amid charred remains. Whispers ignited, liaisons clandestine? Assault's shadow? Immaculate folly? Scandal's ember glowed in taverns and parlors, yet none linked it to Milwood's ledger ghosts, for who but Thomas held the key?
3 days he agonized in his chamber, lamplight flickering like faith's wavering, rereading Hannah's words. Till they blurred, poring over registries as if divining scripture. Principles ingrained, truth's pursuit, justice's scale, clashed with compassion's whisper.
Exposure?
A Pyrrhic victory, damning all to judgment's fire. Proverbs haunted, he that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsacketh them shall have mercy.
Yet whose sins? Whose mercy? Decision crystallized at dawn's redemption, he inscribed the unborn as lost in maternal demise, fatherless as kin.
Files sealed, archived in county vaults, dust gathering like forgotten sins. 6 weeks hence, auctions clamor, Milwood sold to Briggs, funds shadowy, perhaps Vance's hidden cash.
Enslaved retained en masse uncommon mercy. Daniel relayed, mothers united, Ruth at 4, bartered secret for covenant, labor loyal sans violence, children undivided.
Briggs, thunderstruck by revelation, assented, conscience stirred or greed sated?
Thomas served his term, quill precise, queries quelled. Pennsylvania beckoned 2 years on, Maryland's soil forsaken.
Yet conscience nagged like thorns in flesh, autumn's harvest drew him back to Milwood one final vigil. Fields barren post-tobacco reaping, earth dark as judgment's robe, air crisp with falling leaves scented by wood smoke. Quarters improved, roofs mended, doors sturdy, gardens blooming with collards and squash, covenant's fruit. Ruth, hanging linens on a line taut as fate's thread, stiffened at his approach. Her charge, now 4, bright-eyed, honey gaze innocent, played with cornhusk effigy, laughter pure as Eden's dawn. Harrington, Ruth intoned, voice woven with wariness and wisdom.
Thought shadows claimed your memory. Unerasable, he confessed, gaze softening on the child.
Safety's assurance sought.
As fates allow.
She glanced daughterward.
Briggs? Flawed vessel, yet bargains hold. Children thrive, our vigil ensures. The unspoken query hung, truth inscribed?
Thomas chose words as carefully as a scribe. Facts reported, 14 births, 1833 to 1836, mothers known, fathers voids.
Vance Parish tragic, records reflect.
Ruth's nod, slow as rivers bend, carried understanding's depth. A faint smile graced her lips, weathered by trials. Peculiar soul, you'd truth's hunter, yet interrer.
Mercy over revelation?
Truth wounds barren, he echoed, spirit recalling the good Samaritan's compassion. Lives preserved, though chained, better than void. Why return, she pressed, hoisting the girl, whose wave mirrored prior innocence. Thomas paused, autumn wind stirring leaves like stirred consciences.
To affirm choice's righteousness. Witness fruit. The child's eyes, mirrors of siblings, held no guile, origins veiled, legacy haunting.
Righteous, I pray, he uttered, departing as sun dipped, casting long shadows like sins unforgiven.
Philadelphia's embrace came, years unfolding like parchment scrolls.
As age silvered his hair, Thomas retrieved a leather folio from desk's sanctum, Hannah's epistle, registry duplicates, 14 names listed, Ruth's Eliza, Sarah's Benjamin, Hannah's Mary, kin etched eternal. Correspondence traced fates, some rooted at Milwood lifelong, others dispersed post-Briggs's 1847 demise, southward scattered, few emancipated post-war, names reborn in freedom's light.
Survival's testament, amid abolition's dawn. War's thunder prompted reconsideration, reveal then, when chains shattered? Yet what fruit?
Widow's desperation exposed, heirs unclaimable, protectors shamed. Silence prevailed, akin to women's vigil.
Records endured unaltered, 14 anomalies, curiosities in archives' gloom.
1873 brought Margaret Hayes, historian delving genealogies, unearthing Milwood's pattern in Maryland vaults. Her journal treatise speculated, paternal voids shielding white sires, humane haven amid antebellum cruelties. Mild stir, then fade, mysteries abound in faded ink, incomplete as human tales.
Hayes glimpsed not the core, truth in interstices, silence as pregnant as Catherine's womb. Ledger lingers in state archives, 14 entries defiant administrative enigmas from 1836. Curious, unexplained, spiritually chilling, divine justice in concealment?
Some riddles demand pursuit, others, sacred burial. The widow's secret endures, a haunting legacy of guilt, redemption, retribution echoing eternally in soul's quiet recesses.